Boric ant baits. Terminix gets fined $10 million. Maryland to ban neonics. And the new Guinea flatworm invades South Florida on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez. I hope you're having a marvelous week. Had a great weekend. Very relaxing. Always is relaxing with us around here. Try not to do too much, but we had fun. And during the week, it's been awesome. I can't complain. We're just in bug heaven right now with everything that's going on. So I'm super excited that you're here. I don't know what part of the world you find yourself in today, but if you're not involved with pests or pest control, you have no idea what you're missing. It's a ton of fun. So there's a lot of things that are going on around the world in the pest news. We got a lot of things going on the podcast. I'm really, really excited about what's happening, what's going on with that, the response that we're getting from people around the world, and I'm super excited about what's happening overall. Your business life, your personal life, your spiritual life, whatever's going on. I hope that you're enjoying yourself and what you're doing. And we're just having a ball here. But I wanted to give out today some nice shout outs to people who are listening to us on Facebook and Twitter. They're liking the podcast. I have Rob, the Bugman, Herbert, who gave us a like on Facebook. Hey, thanks for liking us. Really appreciate that. And Total Bug Control. Total Pest Control offers pest control making a difference in Rio Grande Valley. So thank you. Thank you for listening to us on the Pest Geek Podcast, wherever you find yourself. And if we're getting a lot of listeners, I wanted to give a special shout out to all the listeners that not only are listening to us on iPhone devices, on Apple devices, which is our major audience on mobile, but also those who are listening to us on Android. We're getting a lot of Android listeners now where we weren't. And I want to thank you for listening to us on Android devices, especially on Podcast Addict. We're getting a lot of listeners on Podcast Addict. So thank you Podcast Addict listeners, for supporting the podcast and listening to us. Really, really, really appreciate it. Also, I wanted to talk to you about a little book that's a very, very old book, but I think it's a business classic. And this book is a recording of a speech given. I think this was almost 100 years ago. And this book is called Acres of Diamonds. It's a very, very popular book in circles with Amway people. But before you discard it because of that, I want you to really seriously, because it's a very short read. It's a tiny little book. It's really a speech. And I think it's a phenomenal speech, because what we think of in business, all the time you're hearing people saying, you just can't make it in this economy. You can't make it in this environment. You can't make it in this city. Salespeople complaining that we need more services because we don't have enough. And you're so close to the forest sometimes you can't see the trees. And I think this little book, if you listen to it, it's a great listen. I've listened to it at least a half a dozen times, because, we all fall into that rut that, hey man, it's tough here in Miami. It's tough here in Los Angeles. It's tough here in New York. And if we were only somewhere else, we could really do a whole lot better. And unfortunately, I have children. I have a home. I have a business. I just can't pack up and go wherever I think I'm going to do better. I have to try to make it work wherever I can. And that short-sightedness sometimes affects us, and it really does. And it's not something new. So this book, Acres of Diamonds, what it does is it looks at of where you're at and finding a diamond, no matter what soil you're in, what soil you're tilling, that you can find diamonds in the rough, or even really good diamonds wherever you are. So I think it's a great listen. It's a couple of bucks, not really a big expense, but I think it's a really motivational book to give to your people when they start whining and complaining about how they should be somewhere else. And I think it's a great little book. So, take it for what it's worth. Take it with a grain of salt, but I think it's a very little neat book. I wanted to talk to you about a great resource, a business resource. I got my Sirius XM radio in my car, in my wife's car actually, and I don't have those luxuries in my car. I've got, I don't even listen to the radio except for like maybe talk radio. But I've been listening to this great business channel on Sirius XM called, it's from the Wharton School of Business, and it's called Business Radio. Business Radio Talk, powered by the Wharton School of Business. And it is a great, phenomenal show all day long on business and things that affect us in business, entrepreneurship, leadership. Fantastic broadcast. You can check it out. I have a link to the Sirius XM radio show, so you can take a look at the shows that are on there. I haven't seen if I can listen to it over online. I don't think I can, but it's a great radio program if you're looking for inspiration and insight and things that you might be able to apply to your business, to your pest control business. Just in general, for anybody who's in business, it's a great radio podcast. Actually, it's a broadcast, not a podcast. And in the news, we got some sad news to report, but it's what's going on in our business. And Terminix gets fined $10 million for illegally using methyl bromide in U.S. Virgin Islands. And I've got the entire link from the Justice Department on what actually did happen. So in case you're reading articles everywhere, go to the source and go to the justice.gov link that I have, and they agree to pay $10 million in several different types of fine. They're on probation. Terminix, after the government begins investigating, voluntarily ceased to use methyl bromide in the U.S. and in U.S. territories, except for a remaining supervised government contract that they have. And I suspect this isn't the end of it for them. This is just the government portion of the fines. I'm sure now they'll probably end up in court battle, in litigation over settlements with the family of the people that were injured because of the use of this product, or the illegal use of this product. So, it's what happens in our industry, unfortunately, when sometimes things are done wrong. And, they're just a big name and a big brand that, just made it in the news. And it's unfortunate because, the money doesn't make up for the people that were injured because of the actions of some technician or somebody who made a decision to do that. And that is very sad. But it is what it is. Go take a look at it. Check out what actually did happen in the legislation. In the actual ruling. Actually they pleaded to this. So, in the investigation. So take a look at that and check it out. Also, Maryland, may be the first state to ban neonics for homeowners. Beekeepers join academics and conservationists in convincing the state General Assembly that the mass death over the past 4 years are likely tied to the widespread use of household pesticides linked to honeybee mortality. And so they basically have convinced a bunch of people that this might actually be the cause of homeowners using insecticides. And although, the homeowners use way more insecticides than we do, we only cover about 20% of the industry of homeowners. 80% of it do it themselves. And you don't know what homeowners are doing when they're applying a product, if they're even applying it correctly or if they're even reading the label. You don't know that. And unfortunately, the Maryland Department of Agriculture disagreed, saying that they too care about the decline of bees, but that there is little scientific evidence linked to neonicotinoids. And they refuse to comment on that other than the comment that they made. Maryland says it lost more than 60% of its hives last year, each up to 20,000 bees. Ouch. That's got to be painful for those guys. But, they themselves admit nobody's giving them answers of why their bees are dying. Nobody knows. And, again, it's we're suspecting it's linked to this, but since we don't know, let's just ban it. The problem that the Department of Agriculture has with this is that it's concerned about the $200,000 allocated in the House bill to implementation of enforcement. Agriculture said it would likely cost more than $1 million the first year, nearly that much every year afterwards. They say keeping tabs on homeowners would be a major headache, officials at the agency said. No kidding. How would you ever be able to enforce a homeowner from using a pesticide, and especially a neonic, and finding out that they've used it? It would be close to impossible. You can pass that law all you want, but that would be impossible to really enforce. What they're asking for, homeowners would be banned from buying products containing neonicotinoids such as Knockout, ready-to-use Grub, Ortho, and others. Let's Go Bandit, which, you can buy over the counter at, like professional stores that sell product to landscapers and pest control operators. Homeowners can walk in and buy the same product. And that's one of the problems that the industry has with a beef with that, is that you can buy the same products we use and use them. And unfortunately, it's legal to do. They can buy it, including a lot of manufacturers have redone their labels and removed text containing for use by professionals only. And they've removed that from their label, enabling anyone to be able to use that product. So what they're saying is, well, even if you did ban it, we can still order it over the internet. So the legislature now has to look at how would they actually enforce that kind of law. The article was in the Washington Post. There's a link to that, and you can read the entire article in the Washington Post there. Now, going to a local level in South Florida, we have a new pest that is going to be could be a nightmare. The New Guinea flatworm. The flatworm, what it does is it tends to attack scales. And you're saying, what's the big deal? Well, the primary ecological concern is that it's already attacked in Guam. I'm sorry, not in Guam, but in Hawaii, in Oahu. It has already attacked, their native tree scales and tree snails. And so it's a primary concern. Now here, if it ate the giant snail and killed it, it'd be great. But it also does a work on, the Florida tree snails. So that's a big concern. The second biggest concern that they have is the potential of it being able to transmit, it becoming a vector virus for rat lungworm. And this article was in the Florida Pest Pro, which is now produced by the University of Florida Entomology. And what they worried about is that if humans eat the J3 infected stage rat lungworm larva, it could be an infection of it's called eosinophilic meningitis. And if people are growing their own vegetables in the garden, they're growing their own, herbs, and you get snails, and then the lungworm attacks the snail in that area, it can transmit it, and then you're taking it into your house and eating it and then getting the infection. So that is a major concern. The other problem is there's no registered pesticide for the land planarian control of this worm. Also, the best control method is going to be cultural controls, and also controlling snails in your landscape. So the other thing is rodent control. So there you go. If you are in South Florida and you are dealing with residential customers who are planting in their garden food, even fruit trees could be a problem. So there's a lot of fruit trees here in South Florida. People got lemon trees and mango trees and avocado trees and banana trees. So that could be a huge problem. And so you're better off advising your customers and inspecting for these and taking a look at them, because that could be a potential health hazard for your clients. So, keep that in mind. There's a great, with every travesty and every new pest, there's a new opportunity for us to do something. And, this just happens to be one of them. And I like to talk to you about using boric acid gel baits for controlling ants. There's a big resistance to them with a lot of people. They don't want to use gel baits, and they don't want to use a specific boric acid. They tend to go first for the neonic, non-repellent chemical option. And the reason is, in our mind, somehow chemical is more effective. If you tried using boric acid in the past and it didn't work for you, then you assume that just boric acid doesn't work for anything. And you tend to discard anything else made with boric acid. But I want you to consider that, and I want you to, and this has basically been on my experience, and I've tried every single bait that has come out in a gel form for controlling ants, because my biggest problem that I've always had is ants. Ants is the biggest thing, and recurring ant problems is a big thing. Getting rid of the nests is a big thing. And if I just sprayed and I didn't get control, then obviously I must have a nesting problem, and I need to tackle that. So I've used, Advion ant gel, Max Force ant gel, Alpine, which I think has been discontinued, and OptiGuard gel, Max Force Quantum, Taro, Ant Gourmet, and Thickwood. And I definitely have my favorite that I think the best of all time so far. There's one in here which I'll give to you at the end, but I want you to consider why I like ant baits so much. And the reason I like baits, and I don't know if I said this in the past, but I'll say it again. I don't have to worry about where the insect is. The insect knows where it lives. And if it can take a bait back and knock out that nest, it's much better than if I had to spray. Because if you've got nesting problems on your counter, behind the walls, and you got them all over the counter, a spray on the floor is not going to control that ant problem. You need to find at least where that nest could be, or let the insect find out where that nest is. So with the neonics, the non-repellent baits, they work. And a lot of them work, and they've worked fine for me, and I've used them, and some of them work fine. A lot of the problem with some of the baits is how long does it last. It's a couple of days, weeks. It gets hard. Those are problem with baits in general. This is not just one specific one that has this problem. Others do it more than others, depending on the food matrix that they use. Some of them are going to be more attractive to one species than another species. So that's going to vary, but I've used them all. The one I liked the most out of all the neonics that I used was Max Force Quantum. especially for controlling ghost ant. We get mainly ghost ant. Inside, we're getting constantly white-footed ant problems and crazy ant problems. They control all of them fine. I've used them and they worked fine. And I got control. And then every time I saw a trail, we treated it. You find a little crack, you find a little crevice, you put that gel in there, and you hide it and get it out. And then if not, you can put some in a station, put it behind the microwave, put it behind the floor of the refrigerator, put it somewhere. Obviously, if you have little kids in the house, I always ask, hey, do you have little children? Do you have pets? I'm not going to put out a bait station, where somebody can just grab it. But usually on the counters, the kids can't reach it. You put it behind the oven, the toaster, the microwave, in a corner somewhere where nobody's going to touch it. And you can, you'll be just fine. The ant's going to find it. So that's never been an issue. The one I think I dislike least of all of the gel baits is the OptiGuard. It did control them. It did work. But when you pour it out, it's very, very difficult to work with because it looks like you're putting out gelatin that didn't set, and you got half water and half jello, and it just oozes and it squirts out bigger. There's no control, very bad control of me trying to put it out. So if I'm finding a crack or crevice or place, you're getting these bloop, 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 literally coming out, and I just didn't like it. But it did work. So anywhere that I put it, it would work. And then I tried using because I'm pushing the envelope constantly on the least toxic method, the least toxic product. That's what we're about. We're about the least toxic. We need to get control. We need to be effective, but we need to look for both. Give the option of the least toxic with the best control. And what's going to give us that compromise? Is it the procedure? Is it the product? Is it the pest that we're targeting? What is it that's going to give us the control to be able to satisfy the customer and get control? And I used in the boric acids, I used Ant Gourmet at the beginning. I've used it. Ant Gourmet worked fine. It's a boric acid bait, but it's very, very thick, and it's more like a pasty gel, really thick gel, and it gets hard very, very quickly. It turns yellow, so very hard to to control it in a long period of time. Taro I've used, but I go up to most houses and people are using Taro, and especially for ghost ants. I don't know if the ant is consuming the products before it gets back to the nest and dying, but we're not getting the control we were, especially on ghost ants. So it's a liquid, very liquidy. It does get moldy quickly. It does crystallize more quickly than other products. So, a couple of weeks, a month, you got to replace it. They got the stations. Most of the houses I go to, the customer already has the station of Taro there, and it's not controlling the problem. What you got to know about baits is any bait that the ant falls inside, and you got a station and the ant falls inside, that bait's going to get rancid. And if the bait gets rancid and gets acidic, the ants won't eat it anymore. So you'll see these ants dying inside, and you have to basically take the station out, throw it away, and put a new station. And a lot of customers are using the abamectin over-the-counter baits. I've never seen that to really work on anything. I don't know what's up with that. I'm going to have to do some studying on that to find out why over-the-counter abamectin ant stations aren't really working. I mean, I've seen them in everybody's house, and it's working for no insect that they have, no ant insect working. And then the third one that I got turned on to, which I switched to after I used it, and I found it was working just as good as the Quantum. It's working, just as good as anything else I've used, but it's more versatile. It doesn't get as moldy. It doesn't get crystallized. It doesn't set as fast. I can reduce it in water. I can use it for exterior ant stations where I can cut it in half with water and put it outside in these B&G stations, which I love, those B&G ant stations for exterior. Best ones I've seen. And we use those extensively. It's been Thickwood. And Thickwood has been one of those by Rockwell Labs that consistently produces results for us. whether I put it in a station or I find a trail and I put it on the trail. We've got white-footed ants here that are a nightmare, and people will spray with neonics and then treat the attic. And what I found is if I just get up on a ladder where that trail is up in the attic and place a line where that trail is, we bait them out of the attic, and there's no need to treat that attic. So it saves hours of labor in those attics. It saves the customer money because we don't have to charge them for an additional attic treatment. We don't have to lay a product in the attic, which I'm not a fan of, just putting a product in the attic or dusting attics. Not a fan of that. So it does, so in this case, it is the most eco-friendly option that's available. I've tried it with those 3 types of ants, and it works great. I don't know what else. We're going to be doing a test now on a lot that we got that we are doing. It was totally infested with big-headed ant and big-headed ants on the label. So we're going to try putting out stations following the protocol from Hawaii that they used for, I think it was for pineapples or I forgot what crop, and they had big-headed ant, and they used the stations, and it cut down on the amount of chemical they needed to use. So we're going to be doing some trials with that, let you know how that's going. But yeah, the finding, not discarding these boric acid baits as being effective solutions for ant problems, where you can use very little amount, in a very low toxic way, that is not, you're not putting out a synthetic product if you don't have to. And I believe that, whatever the service is that you're doing, targeting it, and if you can find the least toxic method is what we're going after, even if that least toxic method might be more work. It's not always about how quickly we do it, how it's about being effective, and then being responsible. So that's what, what we're shooting for. That's what we're about. And I just wanted to, talk a little bit about that. And because, the tendency again is let's go for the big brand. I know I've used Fipronil for this, so they've added Fipronil to it. In Europe, they got other products. I think they got one in the UK called Firmador, which is the Fipronil. It has the same active ingredient as the Max Force ant bait, not the Quantum, but the original first one they had out, and it's the same active ingredient. And I had one listener that was listening, and he told me about it. Says, "Hey, I used it, and I got great results from it. I haven't got a call back since. I'm going to give him a shout out to see what's been going on, if he's got it." And like I said, you might have to, some of the ants aren't on the label. So you got to look at, well, is the ant on the label? And if it is, try it. And what you might find out that for one specific type of ant, another type of bait with another type of ingredient is going to work better. And in that case, that's our first choice. So this is what we apply at first option for all these other ants, and then we'll try it. I've even had carpenter ants eat it and die. It's just not going to get rid of the nest. So I've had them do it. I've seen them taking it, nibbling at it and then walking away, and using it. But I don't think we're going to get control of that with it. But it was interesting to see it. Some of the items like Quantum will control carpenter ants, will control fire ants. So you can use it, a harvester ant. So a lot of these ants, you got to look at what's on the label and try it. My thing always is, look, just try it. Don't discard it. Don't say, well, it just, it didn't work in this type of environment, so therefore it won't work in this other type of environment. I think you need to have a little bit of that curiosity in you, that explorer mentality, to try a lot of these things that are unconventional sometimes, but they work. And I just wanted to leave you with that, folks. Hey, look, thank you. It's been real. I've had a blast. I love doing this podcast. I love doing what I do in this business. And, I will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.